Okay, so are you all set to go? Okay. I come here to Mexico, and I'm naive in a way. We're all naive about Mexico and what we see here. And so I'm going to ask you a question based on perhaps a naive observation. And then you can just comment on it, how you feel, because I'm a reflective in many ways of the kind of people we're going to be talking to and the kind of people you like to talk to, I think. Need to talk to, perhaps. And so what I have seen and from what I've read about you and from what about your concerns and so on, I see that there appears to be two kinds of forces going in conflict with each other. One force is what I've called lo tradicional. That is, people who seem to be in a traditional lifestyle, and somehow over a period of centuries this lifestyle of the people has tended to exist in harmony with their environment in some way, in most ways. People get along. The Indian people here have gotten along. But at the same time, against that, there seems to be this idea of progress and development. And I know from what I've seen of the articles you've read and you've written and so on, that you have an ecological viewpoint. And I guess the question is there any kind of way you can see where there can be any resolution between the traditional way of life and progress? Can there be any resolution to it? Or is it always going to be in conflict?
Well, we could be a little more tactful and less brutal in the approaching. Maybe not come with all the machinery that we have and make it slaves, equal slaves. Mm-hmm. We are. If we haven't a car, we get crazy when the electricity go out. We are hopelessly, because we don't know what we do. And to avoid that kind, but to really save tradition, I am afraid that's impossible. It will last. Some resistance will exist for some time, especially here in the highland. But that finally it's going to not be drowned by what we call progress. And most of the time is destruction. Destruction of their cultures not because we want to do it or the government want to do it, but just by what we have done with the planet, with the world, with our life. We come like a tank, tractors, into their pueblos, into the land, in their tradition. So, and then finally, of course, they like to accept what we have. It's so much easier, for example, to go and buy blue jeans than to weave their beautiful costumes. So finally, as we're gone, there is a resistance yet, especially amongst the women, to quit all those things. But the men who even come out more than women, they are more easily accepting what's going on outside.
Do you see your role here and the role of Nabalum as trying to preserve as much of that tradition as possible? Is that part of your mission here or part of your work over these years?
Well, you know, you cannot force any person to keep tradition they don't want to keep. We cannot force an Indian to tell him, you should keep your beautiful costume when he wants to put our ugly clothes on. That's his right to do. We cannot intervene in that sense. If he wants to use only a car and not walk anymore, which he did and was healthy, well, go around the corner to buy some cigarettes in a car. What can we do again? We brought it in. We should get a little different. We should use less and know what happens, and that's maybe the worst. That even in question of food, they are accepting the worst what we have. Packaged food, junk food is coming in. It's easy to open a package, you see. The multinational soft drinks, Coca-Cola, is absolutely invading every mountainside village. I just come from a horseback trip for 5 days. I didn't see a house where there were not stacked up those soft drinks, Coca-Cola, whatever it is, which is bad for their health when they drink it, bad for their economy because they spend money on that junk instead of buying their good food, you know. And so this is a tremendous situation. There we could do something. We could do some better with the radio. Mm-hmm. Radio is an incredible force. Every Indian has a radio. What do we do? I just read an article a moment ago that the millions and billions are spent in announcing the drink. And we have tremendous problem of alcoholism in Mexico, real problem. But we should stop these anuncios. We should forbid these anuncios. That's not democracy to keep those, excuse me, I talk very ugly, bastards announcing those things which are so very bad for the health and for the people to announce them day and night and lavando el cerebro, washing their what do you call it? Servo. Bother the head with all that junk till finally they buy it. This is a thing we could do. See, there we could do something. We could have better radio and television programs. I think, is precisely one of the good television programs. But when you look at the television, here, not in Europe so much, the propaganda, the commercial propaganda is just disgusting, interrupting the most beautiful programs. And there also we could do something, you see, to stop this. That's possible. Yeah?
Well, I was going to ask you, because one of the questions I had was, if you were the person who owned or had access to a radio or a television station here in Mexico or anywhere, what would have you thought about what you would do with it? How would you use it?
Of course I would have to have the money. But you know, in Switzerland, the radio is state-owned, mm-hmm. And there is absolutely no commercial propaganda. You pay for the radio like you pay your bill for electricity or gas or whatever it is. And then there is no commercial propaganda on it. In television there is, but not that much, because that's not all state-owned at all, but not like I see it here and in the United States. So, well, what I would do, I would certainly give some pleasure to the people too. You could show them very nice piece of theater. You could not only get, excuse me, I'm almost from the last century, at least from the beginning, not only rock and roll and the shouting music, which gets your ears already totally ruined, some classical music. For example, here, the Indian radio does that. There is an Indian radio in 4 languages, in Indian languages, and they give classical music. They give also popular music. But there is good popular music, you see. But we give mostly the verse. Bang, 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 that you go crazy. That we could do. Though you would ask what I would do else. I said, you cannot change many things. What we can change, those things we can change. And what we can change else, we can help to not destroy the planet. Mm-hmm. I helped the Lacandones before. Material, medicine, that's not so much necessary. I came to the resolution, you cannot help anybody, nor Indian, destroying the habitat where they are. So my fight today is for the habitat of the human race. That means that not destruction here, locally of the forests, try to do another kind of agriculture, and find alternatives for the people who live from here to the tropical rainforest. We have erosion here, there were terraces made, we have to introduce new things. We can find alternatives. There is one problem, of course, one problem just now where there is awakening in Mexico in all that, better agriculture, more health, precisely in agriculture and the campesino, and ecological, an awakening, see what's going on. But no, all that costs money. And now we are in the debt. And I just read what the higher taxes of your United States Bank do to the debt of Mexico is just horrifying. So we are getting to be pushed more and more in a ditch. That's very dangerous.
Now, you were talking about the Lacandonian Indians that you've worked with. How did you get involved with them in the first place?
Well, I read about them. When I came over to the United States in 1940, I had a book by Jacques Soustel, the French anthropologist, about Mexico, mostly Chiapas and the Lacandones, and I decided to go, and I would go to Mexico I was 8 months in the States, getting the money for the people who came to Mexico, the refugees. They came in boats, but the money came from the States. And then I came to Mexico, and that job was finished. And went to the Lacandones with the first governmental expedition. And they were totally isolated, totally maybe extra, they were isolated, and they were living scattered in family groups through the jungle. That's totally changed today.
And was your work with them part of that change, or
Well, that not in the change, to help them take the change. You see, they had to change because of the invasion of thousands and thousands of Indians from the highland and other farmers with no land from other states of Mexico. So they lost actually their forest. That means they had to have documents for the land in the forest. Before, the forests were there, but there came the other people. And I helped in the documentation, of the land, knowing that you take the jungle from them. But it was necessary because they couldn't live like that anymore. They had to come together in settlements. And they founded 3 settlements, one of the southern group of Lacandones. There's a difference between south and north. Difference in the language, Maya, a little bit. They understand each other, difference in their traditions. And so they didn't have any contact. So they formed one community of the South group and 2 communities of the North group. And one only of those communities, one of the North group, has the old tradition today. In religion, they have also cars on the road.